Well, we're going to go ahead and kick off with this amazing team behind me. As brand leaders, we know campaigns can spark attention, but movements spark action, shift culture, and build legacy. And that's what we're here to do, build legacy. This next conversation is all about how brands can move with more intention, show it with purpose, and stay consistent. Not just when it's trending, but when it truly matters. Let's get into what creative activism looks like now and where it is headed. So moderated by Nadege DeBrosse with Outside the Box Digital. She's an executive producer. And our panelists for this conversation include Chad Fernandez, who's the CEO of Out of the Box, Jarret Thompson, the Chief Revenue Officer of Out of the Box Digital, and Dr. Babs Faseesin, the SVP of Strategy at Starcom. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Okay,
Are we
mic
ready to
check,
rock?
1, 2.
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2.
Okay. All
All
right,
right.
it sounds good.
I like
right?
this.
Sound good?
First of all,
Okay.
before we begin, y'all, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to the Blackout team and the Black Ad team and the amazing OUTFRONT team for providing this platform for us and this opportunity. It's major. So for those who don't know us, I'm Jarret Thompson. No, not Thomas, but I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Outside the Box Digital, and I got to do the intro. So welcome to the More Than Entitled experience. I've got my brother, my brethren, your favorite CEO, Chad-EO with me. We've also got the balance with us,
Yes.
right? Nadege, and we got Dr. Babs with
Dr.
us.
Babs in the building.
Clap it up.
This is what
Yes.
we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So before
Yeah.
we do the right intro, I just want to
Yeah.
let y'all know what we do here at More Than a Title, right? So we interview people like Dr. Babs, people that are really moving and shaking and putting on for the culture, whether you're a CEO, entrepreneur, CMO. What we want to know is how you got there, who are you as a person, and what you do, so we can give advice to the next ones coming up. And so today, what our panel is going to be is about activism and branding, right? So what does activism mean, y'all, when y'all think about that? Let's just start with there. Let's start that as a catalyst, and let's jump this off. So, Dr. Babs, what do you think?
Well, just try and catch my breath. That intro.
Arsenio this thing.
Yeah, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Generally, when I think activism, I essentially think about a connection within a people united by the same purpose, and that connection being expressed either through words or action in order to move a certain behavior or change a certain pattern of behavior in society. Now, that sounds very academic. I'm a professor.
I was going to
There
say
you
that.
go.
I was going to say, can I break it down to literal terms?
No, I was about to ask you,
I
Chad.
was about to break it down to normal terms.
But ultimately, you certainly want to effect change in society, and activism is one tool to help do that.
So let's talk
so-
about some examples, right? What
Yeah.
are some examples that we've known in the recent years that was actually good, activism and branding that actually changed the world and also changed the bottom line for the brand?
I mean, I'm sure you're vast at this than I am when we think about examples of activism. Frankly, some of the most significant ones haven't been ones led by brands specifically. They probably are the ones led by the people.
Yeah.
So when a people, and you have several examples, you want to talk about the civil rights movement. That's one that will never be erased from history. That actually is a masterclass for brands to learn how to galvanize people with the same vision, with the same purpose, and get to market and effect change. That's one very beautiful example, and someone should definitely curate the process and maybe make a masterclass out of that. That's probably I would refer to that as probably best example, if you will, for demonstrating how a brand can unite people through one united purpose and drive action, visible change.
Absolutely.
What about you guys? Does anything come to mind for you?
We all know one of the biggest activism examples, the Colin Kaepernick taking the knee.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest ones of this last 10 years, the Black Lives Matter movement. That's all activism. But I think I loved your answer, but I like to put it simply, like, are we doing something or are we not doing something? That's where activism, like, because sometimes I feel like we overcomplicate things so much that we spend too much time talking and not enough time doing.
Message.
We spend too much time talking. Like, the conversations are great. Us having this panel, this is phenomenal. We talking about it. Yeah, we talking about it. What happens after the panel? What happens after the panel ends? Then all the talk stops, and then where's the movement behind the message, right? So I just feel like sometimes we got to simplify these things and just understand, like, are we doing something? What are we doing? What does that look like? And let's just get to it, you know?
Absolutely. I agree with you. But I also think on the flip side too, I think we're in a place now where brands, we want to know what you stand on. And if you're standing on business, right? The Colin Kaepernick example was right? So they get behind, they do the great campaign, it brings in millions of dollars, it gets all these awards, right? But then on the same token, you get somebody like Kyrie Irving, who was a person on their roster that also spoke out about things in the black community, and then you drop them off, right? So us as the community, we also have to hold these brands accountable. Right? We're not just gonna wear the nice shoe, wear the nice sneaker and all that other stuff and let you get on the back of culture and not actually put on for the culture.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me think of one of the questions I had. Was like, well, how do we ensure that brandings don't dilute their message into those common things that we buy, like with Juneteenth, the Pan-African flag, napkins and papers and cups. So how can we ensure that brands, stay true to their word and really stay true to the culture?
So that's a very, very good question. Oftentimes, brands attempt to hijack moments in culture. And those, we've seen that play out across multiple categories and across multiple brands. But to your point, our audiences, consumers are savvy.
Yeah.
They know exactly when brands are inauthentic. And as a strategist, every day I work and make recommendations to brands, urging them to show up more authentically in spaces that they have a right to play. Because oftentimes brands just want to leverage opportunities, like, oh, there's an opportunity in a specific time in culture, let's jump in that opportunity. My question oftentimes when these come to me is, what's your right to play in that space?
Message.
You sometimes have the money. Yes, you have the budget, you have the brand equity, you are known and all of that, but do you have a right to play in that specific time in culture? If you don't, please don't step in there. Because whilst you're thinking that you could secure some of the dollars from that opportunity, you certainly should know that you're dealing with an audience today that's more savvy than ever before. They would see through it and understand that you're showing up just to take advantage of the cultural moment, if you will, as opposed to showing up authentically in a space that you truly own the right to play.
That was real. That was a great answer.
It's a phenomenal answer, but the way that you do that is you hold them accountable. It's accountability. The same way you got to show, you're a professor, whatever job you have, whatever profession you have, it didn't matter what you did yesterday, right? You could have been phenomenal yesterday. But if you show up today late, they're gonna say, why was you late? If you show up today and you didn't put in the work that you needed to do, you're gonna be reprimanded for it, right? So every day you gotta show up and continue to perform. And yesterday was yesterday, this is today. So what's the difference in the brands? What's the difference in the brands? If they're gonna show up, we gotta hold them accountable to say, okay, yeah, we see you here in the moment, or we see that you're acting like you wanna support this movement, but what does that look like long term? Not in the short term effect where you might be trying to capitalize on dollars, but like we said, like when nobody's looking, when the media buzz dies down, when it's not in the media cycle no more, front page news, everybody not tweeting about it, are you still doing the work then?
That's a fact.
Or does it die out and then everybody disappear?
How do you hold them accountable then? Right? How do we as consumers hold those brands accountable when they do fall short?
Well, I mean, a great example of that is what we did with Target. What we did with Target, and me personally, look, it starts with the individual. You can't expect anybody to change if you're not willing to change yourself. So everybody got to start taking a hard look at yourself and saying, are you really talking the talk or are you walking the walk, right? And I'll just give a big example out there, right? I used to shop at H&M a lot. Like I loved H&M, their clothes were great, wonderful buy, right? And then they came out with that ad where they had the two boys and the Caucasian kid had on like a nice little hoodie. Then the little black kid had on the hoodie that said like coolest monkey in the jungle or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, this passed all the way through corporate? Like you thought this was okay? So right then and there, I stopped supporting them. because you can't spit in my face and disrespect my culture and then expect me to continue to, you know what I'm saying, go to your business and support your business. And I stopped right then and there. Now, if other people don't stop that, like what we talked about earlier, like other panels, right? Yeah. If you see other people still shopping, everybody's not gonna have the same thing, but it starts with each person. Yeah. So if I start with it and you say, yo, I noticed you ain't doing this, or I know you're doing that, now we can have a conversation and say, well, this is why I'm not doing it. And this is why. So when companies, when you affect their bottom line, because their bottom line is not our story. Yeah. Doctor, is their bottom line our story? Is their bottom line our struggle? No, their bottom line is this, their dollar. So we got to understand how to affect change. So to affect change in them is to affect their bottom line.
But it's also a slippery slope though, right? Because like with certain movements, we also need the brand dollar. So the question, I think the better question is, should we allow these brands in on some of these movements? Would Colin Kaepernick's movement been better had it not had Nike? Right? But we need those dollars to get our message and voice out. So then we can't hold them accountable when I need your dollars. So then it's a slippery slope that you play as a content creator, as a consumer, as all of those things, right? So I think that's the better question. When we have these movements like the Black Lives Matter, right, movement, right? And imagine you see a Nike check on a Black Lives Matter shirt. They were there. If you looked at every NBA game, it was on the court, all those things, right? Did it dilute the message of what we were trying to accomplish? And I think that's something that we, I would love to, what's your thoughts on that? Should we include the brands in these moments?
Well, sometimes I think it's beyond us to determine
Absolutely.
whether or not we include brands.
That's a message.
We have to remember that brands also bring value to these conversations. So it's probably just having those more authentic and transparent conversations. So from building the plan, which is what I will be doing, and thinking through the plan, the brand, the talent that we're talking about, the moment and culture, and finding alignment across all of these to ensure that the brand actually has a role to play, has a right to win, and then shows up authentically. But then the question then becomes, for how long do you want to show up? Right. Do you want to show up for a quick sales activation, or do you want to show up for the long term? What I've found over time is brands that actually invest in a philosophy and stick to their philosophy over time have built equity with consumers. And so it's a lot easier over time, having built equity with a certain cultural cohort or cultural group. It's a whole lot easier than those short sprints.
Yeah, absolutely.
But certainly we do need each other is what I'm trying to get to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, but once again, like, you can't be smart and dumb at the same time. Like, it gotta be a line. We have to draw a line in the sand. We're talking about hundreds of $1 million companies, $1 billion corporations. And when they do things, and then I go, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You have a chain of command, and this went through the entire chain of command, and everybody that needed to approve this, then you put it out, you waited for the backlash, and then you want to backtrack? So is the backtrack then authentic? And the answer is no. You're only backtracking because now you see that you've upset us and it's gonna affect your bottom line. But you already showed us initially that you didn't take the time or the patience or to have the compassion to think that idea through before you disrespected us by putting that idea out into the world.
So I want to just pivot because you just said something powerful too about showing up. You're having these conversations with these brands to show up authentically, right? There might be people in this room right now that's working for the brands. It's like, how do I help my brand show up that way? What advice are you giving them to play the long game instead of the short game?
That's a great question. You cannot influence a community you cannot connect with.
That's a message.
If you haven't connected with a community, you can't influence them.
Right.
Let alone shift behavior. Ultimately, the goal of brand marketing is to shift behavior in a manner that moves business. So, and you cannot move business until you have moved people. Because people move business. So,
can we get a clap for that? Can we get a clap for that? That was crazy right there.
So my recommendation to brands is, first, don't attempt to show up everywhere.
Right.
No. figure out exactly what spaces and places are authentic, you can authentically show up. We would not expect a brand that is about a certain, philosophy to show up in a space and culture that's completely different just because there's an opportunity in that space.
Right.
So that's one. The other thing is, when you think about this plan, you oftentimes want to plan years in advance.
Yeah.
You want to have lock-in deals. They do that right now, but we do that in all the, sort of partnerships, all the types of partnerships where we do 5-year partnerships. And now, the one way to demonstrate commitment to a cause is to partner with them over the long haul. So let's sign those 5-year deals. And I tell you, chances are we would say, well, we can't tell if this will be successful, so why do we want to go straight into 5-year? So we want to do a test and learn. That's okay, that's also fine. And that's where I recommend for our community to be receptive to those ideas, because they need to be able to justify the bottom line, they need to be able to justify the numbers, and in order to do so, they want to start with test and learn.
Right.
So a test and learn partnership for 1 year, great. But if you keep your eye on the longer term, sign those long-term deals. That's an opportunity for you to show that I am authentically working with this, community over the long haul.
Okay. Well, I want to.
My new best friend. I'm getting 5-year deals. I'm trying. Anybody want to do some 5-year deals? I'm with. This is
I
my
want
manager.
to pivot because we've been speaking about very large $1 million, $1 billion brands. I want to talk about more of those brands that aren't trying to insert themselves into the culture, but are part of the culture. So like Telfar, Trap Bay Yoga. How can those brands move and continue to have growth and success as they're changing societal norms?
Well, let's start with how you start with introducing yourself to the market.
Okay.
Let's start there. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
If you build your brand on, say, Telfar, right? Not for the exclusive people, but for everyone.
Yeah.
So you enter the market in a space where you're already saying that we're not trying to be for the 1%. We're trying to make this bag affordable for everybody. It's a quality, et cetera, et cetera. So you're already setting a certain standard. When you come out the gate, and I understand luxury versus economy and budget and stuff like that, but when you come out the gate and you introduce a product and you already exclude a certain amount of people, money-wise, for the value of what you're putting on your product, you're excluding communities, and you don't even realize that. Because when you say that my bag or my phone or whatever I'm selling costs this amount of money, if certain communities don't make a certain amount of money, they can't afford your product. So what you're saying already to them is, I don't really want to do business with you.
Yeah.
So it starts there. It starts at the introduction of you introducing the company to the people, to the marketplace, and then starting to build from there, right? That's how you build trust from the ground up.
It starts with messaging. He
Yeah.
hit it on the nail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Professor?
Yeah, I might differ slightly.
Okay.
Essentially because brands first need to identify what their ethos is
Okay.
and stick to it. I don't expect that a brand would speak to everyone. So they would certainly, and that's the whole purpose of brand positioning, right? You identify your space, you identify your consumer segments, and you speak directly to them. So yes, some brands would speak to exclusively to certain groups of people. Some brands are mass market.
Right.
Either one of them, there's no good or wrong, right or wrong one. It's just where you want to play, right? So I think it's fine. You may not, but the one thing I agree with is, whilst your positioning might be exclusive in its nature,
Right.
because you are a prestige brand or a luxury brand or whatever you want to call it, your marketing needs to be inclusive in its nature, inherently. So your marketing cannot be disproportionately exclusive.
Right.
So whilst you're speaking to a group, a niche, and oftentimes this is why some of us are in the organizations that we work for, because we're often the ones to say, hey, wait a minute, how are we thinking about this from the lens of inclusivity? Hey, wait a minute, pump the brakes. How did you do this audience segmentation? Can I see how you thought about inclusivity in that process? So that's why we need people like us to pull the brakes to help our organizations, our agencies think through audience segmentation from the lens of inclusivity so that we are not putting out campaigns that are inherently exclusive. That point I agree with.
There we go.
Okay. My
What you
next
think?
one.
Well, I'm curious to think
yeah.
what you think, Cuzzo. I mean, as far as like a brand standpoint, how do you feel like a company should position themselves if they're trying to get in touch with the community on a more social level and show the community that their brand value aligns with what the community feels like is a priority?
You just got to understand the community.
Okay,
You
let's
got
talk
to
about
understand
that.
the priorities of the people, right?
Right.
Well, like I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Like you said with the mass market, right? Nike is just do it, right?
Okay.
But they started off for runners, but we all have a connection to Nike, similar
Okay.
to McDonald's. We had the CMO of McDonald's on. What makes us love about culture, right?
Right.
It's the moments, right? And they build on that moments. They know you used to go to school and go get a Happy Meal and get a McChicken and all, and they play to that, right?
Right.
So what I just want brands to do is stand on it. What I hate is what you always say, is
Right.
the straddle under the fence, right? Just stand on business.
Right.
If you're going to be the Nike that's going to be with the Colin Kaepernick, you're going to be with us, then be all the way with us.
Right.
Be all the way with us. I don't want to see the Kyrie. I don't want to see all of that stuff, right? And then I also want to see you do something for our community, right? Because a lot of times we do more for these brands that we could imagine, because they don't really know a lot about attribution. They do know, right? But there's some of the impact that we have, they cannot measure. And it's up to us to know what that impact is and how we're going to help that and how we're going to move our causes that impact us forward with these brands. I think that's the main thing,
Right.
straight up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to draw attention to something that I actually observed recently. So Ipsos data shows for first quarter of 2025 that the percentage of Americans that require brands to stand for something when it comes to social or political cause declined. So, yes, that's a very
That's
interesting data
interesting. That's
point
very
we should keep in
interesting,
mind. So it declined by 2 percentage points. Now, because as a strategist, we don't go with one line of data, we triangulate data sources, right? So I pick another data source, I go to Gallup study, and Gallup study from 2024 showed the same American adults asking companies to stand for something declined by 10%.
Wow.
So between 2023, end of 2023, and first quarter of 2025, we've seen a decline in the demand from consumers that brands should stand for something. Now, when you want to make this argument in the boardroom, you oftentimes want to present data points.
Right, absolutely.
Now, when the data is showing that brands are consumers that are demanding that brands stand for something is slightly declining, what do you do in that instance to demonstrate or showcase or justify the need for you to show up a certain way authentically?
Double down.
Now, what's happening is, and that's the interesting, it's a little tricky.
Yep.
Sometimes societal temperature influences data points, and data points influences boardroom decisions. So the question you might want to ask is, well, who answered those surveys?
There you go. Where do we get the data?
Right, exactly.
Where did that data
Where did it come
from?
from? Right.
I mean, I'm not questioning the data, I am just questioning the methodology and who are the respondents in that data, but I don't need to tell you who the respondents are. I'm sure you can figure that out yourself. But I'm just bringing out a point that makes it a little difficult for us strategists to paint the picture of why the brand should stand for something today if the data is saying something different. So that's another layer to think about.
Yeah, but what has the data shown, like, all right, for you, right? If you're saying that consumers are saying that and you want them to still stand on something, right? What is one good example of the data showing that if you do stand on something, because you did say, right, the long term versus the short term, what's one example of that we could think of right now, like, that showed, hey, we stuck with the long term, we're still gonna double down, we know what our consumers might not care, but we're still gonna stand on this, we're still gonna be standing on sustainability or something like that, right?
I mean, there are different brands who still are doing exactly what they did 3 years ago. Elf Beauty is
shout out
one
to
of
Elf.
them.
Yeah, Elf.
Elf has
Yeah.
not shifted its position at all.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they doubled down
Right.
on their position. So there are brands. Someone
Right.
said earlier in the previous panel that there are different types of marketers you have to keep in mind. There is the brave marketer, there is the safe marketer, and there's the scary marketer. So, and oftentimes these scary marketers and safe marketers are trying to protect their brand. Don't forget, the thing is, I can't knock them. They're trying to protect their brands. They built this brand over several years, and you don't all of a sudden just want to wake up and have your brand, diluted, all of a sudden. So you're trying to protect it. But then you also have marketers who are very bold and very brave. And I found that over time, some of the most impactful campaigns that we've seen over the years are the ones that came from very, very brave marketers.
Okay.
So you talked about Just Do It, Nike's Just Do It in 1988. To this day, still remains Nike's most powerful
Right.
campaign, if you will.
Right.
Absolute Vodka, 1981. Sorry, I'm not trying to date myself here. Some of you look at me and you're like, he's a young guy. Absolute Vodka, the same thing. These are brands who over the years stood for something they believed in and had the philosophy and followed through. And to this day, I think they're still reaping the benefits of that.
I got a question
'cause
for
we got
him
one
real
more
quick,
question.
just to jump in on that. When you're in the boardroom and you have to explain these statistics and you have to say, this is the reason why and this is the reason why, I would pose a simple question to them and say, what's more valuable to you as a brand? The new customer that you're gonna advertise to and market to and hope to convince that this product is right for them, or the returning customer with the brand loyalty who not only you already have as a customer that's gonna keep coming back, but they're gonna tell their friends, and if anybody asks them, they're gonna be a champion for your brand and continue on. That's free advertisement, et cetera, et cetera. What's more valuable? What's more valuable? Because if it's the new customer, which some businesses operate like on just bringing in new customers, right? Like I think like gyms, right? That's how they profit. They don't profit by people that actually stay. They profit by everybody that signs up after New Year's. I'm about to work out. And by January 7th, the gym is empty, but you paying $29.99 for the next 3 years and you don't realize it, right? They profit off of that. But other companies profit on that return customer base. So how do you get a return customer? Make a product that they like, right? Make a product that they can connect with, but also make them believe in the company. That's the brand value, the brand equity, where they will champion now your brand as if it's theirs. That's what I'm saying. I think that would be a great argument to put forward.
I don't even know what to say
I
to
was gonna say I
that.
have one more- I was gonna say
that.
so I have one more
absolute.
question because we're about to run out of time.
Yeah.
Do you see creative activism evolving beyond visual branding into other sensory spaces like sound, sense, performative art, and what could that look like for Black communities?
You wanna go first, bro? It's your show.
This is
Dr. Babs, go ahead.
Well, there's a huge opportunity for creative activism. I think the most powerful word ever said was never said. So, point is, activism doesn't necessarily have to be through actions and words and loud words, if you will. So, creative expressions that communicate a certain desire for change has a role in culture and will continue to leverage all of the tools that we have, whether that be sound, sonic branding, or that be theater or theater, if you will, acting, whatever tools and expressions of activism available to us would continue to serve and evolve over time. And I think that provides us a big opportunity. Like I started, the biggest form of change, or the loudest word ever said, was never said. And when we think about it that way, and we think about creative ways of communicating our message, whether it's a message of pain or message of joy or message of whatever message it is, the creative ways of communicating that, I think with what we have today, with social media, with the ability for content creators and all, there's so many windows of opportunities for us to express creatively our inner desires, if you will, to achieve change in society.
That's
Wow,
real.
that's very real.
I'm gonna keep it personal to myself as far as activism. And we talk about sound, right? Our platform was built on that. Our platform was built on the fact that I know I couldn't be on this stage unless I actually built the table to be on this stage. I knew that I had all this content in the world. I had all these ideas about marketing, branding, and things like that, but they just saw me as a salesperson. That's why our show was called More Than a Title, right? Because I could also break down your website. I could also be a dev. I could also be that, but I don't want to be put into a box. So I know for us, right, like that, for activism for me is standing up here in some Jordans and a hat right now and sitting there doing that, and also becoming a LinkedIn top voice wearing a hat and a hoodie sitting on my couch. That's how I created activism. I worked at big brands, corporations, 1,500 people strong, and I came in at town hall meetings just like this. And people were like, you could do that? Next town hall meeting, I'm seeing people with their hat cocked to the side, all types of stuff. They wearing their brims. I've had people come to me and be like, yo, I felt comfortable telling my manager to come, my sexuality, because you was yourself. You walked in that room, was speaking to the CEO with your hoodie and your hat on, and it made me feel good, right? It made me feel that I can do whatever. So that's activism for me, man. It's showing up authentically, you know, and making sure that it hits and connects. And this is how we built our platform. So that's why it's on that.
That's a very good answer.
That's a good one, man. You know what I'm saying? That's the real.
I mean, you know, I'm gonna just take a different approach to it. I think the way that we can help change and with the way the world is going is support of others.
That's it.
Support of others, right? So while I was in corporate doing my thing already and I have businesses and I'm running businesses, he's doing what he's doing, right? But then when he comes to me and goes, I have an idea. And I go, what's the idea? And when he pitched me the idea, I didn't run him through the ringer, right? Somebody said they had a meeting and a whole hour and 2 hours just to say, no, I'm not gonna waste this time. Let me hear the idea because I'm genuinely interested. And then let's have a real conversation. How can I support you? What does support looks like? That's me that's activism. I'm activating somebody else. I'm in support of somebody else. And I think that's what we need to do, especially with events like this, right? We need to come together. Even if you don't have the idea primarily, if somebody else has an idea, support them. And I think that's how we're gonna get, you know, move this thing forward in the future. Support.
Thank you so much,
Support.
guys.
Yeah. We'd love any questions from everybody out there.
We're now on questions. Anyone have any questions?
No, come on now, don't do me like that. Come on, somebody know something. Nah, I'm joking with y'all. If not, anything we want to.
If not, I can ask another.
Oh, you want to do it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Let's do it, Nadege.
Can you come to the mic, please?
Yeah, you got to do the two-step. Oh, you got to do the two-step.
Go to the mic.
There you go.
First of all, shout out to my team. More than a title up in the podcast. Loving y'all. Give them a round of applause to my peoples. I have a question for the good doctor. What brands do you feel in the last, I guess, decade have really been felt authentic versus brands that feel opportunistic? Are there any that strike out to you?
Great question.
That's a good question.
Well, I think I already answered that question with Elf. Every time I think about authentically showing up in culture, in spaces where you own the right to play, and doing that seamlessly and not capitalizing on moments in culture, I don't think that I can very quickly think about any brand that comes to mind than Elf. Because I think all of Elf is built on that simple philosophy and they follow through every step of the way. So if they are making, I don't know what their numbers are, if they're generating revenues, I believe they are, because they're moving people, and if you're moving people, you're certainly moving business. So that's the one very solid example of a brand that is built inherently for people and has consistently communicated its philosophy without losing focus.
Mm-hmm. And then another question I have is, you know, we talked about how brands, sometimes they're just there for that short term, or they want to do something for Juneteenth, and most of the times they miss the mark. But, you know, how do we actively talk to the brands about being long-term partners? There's a lot of just like, we're just gonna take this opportunity for Black History Month, what we're gonna do? Like, how do we talk them into being long-term, decades of partnership, you know? Like, you know, Adon spoke about, you know, Beats by Dr. Dre. Also, P&G was getting it right too. Dove is getting it right, it seems, you know.
Right.
How do we get more brands on board? Is there like there's no one solution, but what are some of your ideas?
Dove's a great example. I'm sorry
Yeah.
I had that on my mind. So, Dove's another great example, and Dove's come, you know, a long way in living up to their beliefs. So Dove's another great example. I think one of the ways to have these conversations with brand first is to have people in the room. So if you have people in the room who can have these conversations, that's very helpful. I think any organization, any brand, any company that has talented people of color within their organizations should feel like they are, should feel privileged to have people of color within their organizations who can have these conversations with them. And I encourage brands to like be open-minded when they're thinking about their plans for the year. Sometimes some brands are very clear in who they're speaking to,
Right.
and they would focus only on who they're speaking to. That's fine. But there are brands who are seeking opportunities outside of their current audience segments.
Right.
There are brands that are saying, what are some of those audiences that we could reach out to? I think in those types of conversations, it'll be great to explore some sort of inclusivity. That's one. Think about your audience segment from the lens of inclusivity. Second point is when you think about tapping into culture, you want to think about tapping into culture for the long haul versus short-term gain. Because, thank you.
I got a follow up to that, right? What if leadership changes?
That's a very good question.
You're 2 years into this 5-year campaign, and now there's a new CEO coming on, and we have to change that. How does that impact the brand and the culture at both times?
That's one of the challenges of big organizations. When leadership changes, in some way, the new leadership has a new vision, and oftentimes that truncates whatever they already have in the pipeline. And it's not exactly the easiest or the best for the brand because you can't build a long-term, effectiveness if you keep changing from approach to approach because you've switched CMOs.
That's real.
Okay, well,
Let me just add. I just want to add one thing. Oftentimes, even if we're not talking about major brands, there are brands and businesses from people that have built their business up that they now are able to give back to the community. I don't want to exclude those people because there's a lot of entrepreneurs, right, that work their way up and they maybe weren't able to give back and now they want to enter that space. How do we deal with them, right? And we've seen that from time to time where they want to sponsor something or they want to get involved. I think with those type of situations, we just have a real earnest conversation and say, what are you looking for, right? Like, what are you looking to gain from this? Are you just looking to get in on the moment? Are you looking to make some money, or are you actually trying to be a part of the culture, help move the culture forward? And based off of their answer, if you decide to form a partnership with them, like Shannon Sharps, when we interviewed Shannon Sharps, said over-deliver, right? Over-deliver, right? Then show them the value. So where say, okay, well, they was expecting this and you brought back this, now when it comes time for that long term or that renegotiation, it's a no-brainer. But what we have to do is deliver on what we're saying if we're dealing with these brands and not under-deliver. That way they can use that as an excuse to say, oh, this wasn't profitable, this didn't meet our metrics, and we don't want to continue to move this thing, right?
Yeah.
So.
okay.
So
well.
I think
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Comments? Well, thank y'all so much for having us. We're more than a title. Thank you, Dr.
No, you gotta get that.
Sorry.
No.
Okay,
This is
we
more
have
than a
an outro. We have an outro.
All right,
Please,
take us home,
to my
man.
brothers,
But
please.
Before you take us home, I just want to say thank you again to Black Cat. Thank you again for OUTFRONT. This is a way to show up, right, authentically for culture.
Yep.
Making
Yes.
sure you give up spaces like that to give people like ourselves the opportunity to speak and have a voice at places like this. And shout out to everybody that's here and part of the More Than Title family. And if you're not a part of the you are now because you were here at this panel. So shout out to everybody. It's all love, beautiful faces here. I love the energy. And please connect with us, y'all. Please.
So on that, we're gonna say this, right? Anybody that met us at Black Week, anybody that met us at any event, please do not come up to us if you want to be transactional. So this is our way of of us being activists, right? We're not transactional. We're not looking for a one conversation, a one deal. We're looking to build relationships with people who want to move this culture forward, right? Yeah. Plain and simple. So if you're looking for a quick deal, we're not the company for you, right? We have the strength to say no. We have the conviction to say that's not what we're about, because we're for the people, right? We use a term called impact over metrics, right? Impact over metrics. We don't care about the dollar amount. We don't care about how many downloads. We care about affecting the community and the change that we're enacting there. So everybody that knows us, we're going to hold you guys accountable. Please hold us accountable. And we look forward to continuing conversations with you guys. And we look forward to seeing whoever's going to Cannes. Yeah. And we're going to go to Cannes and we're not going to act like strangers. Yeah. Right here. We're going to hug each other, act like we know each other. And we're going to work together, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to move this thing forward. We appreciate y'all.
Love it. Yes, all roads to Cannes. Y'all energy is like on 1,000. I love it.